Hello everyone. Today I'm going to teach you how to use the Fate of the Norns character sheet and API script for Roll20. So in this I'm going to go over both like what you need to do to set up the entire game, assuming that you're the Norn or you're the person who owns the Roll20 Pro account or whatever. And then, in the second half, I'm going to show you how to use the basics of the character sheet. So if you are just a player, you don't need to set anything up. There will be a time code in the description below, and you can just zip to that part. But assuming that you're the one making the game, and first off, whoever owns the pro account needs to be the one making the game. Or at least that's a good idea, because the character sheet does not, well, it is functional without the companion API script. You will get a lot of additional functionality out of it if you have access to the API, which means you need to have a pro account. So that's the first thing, is whoever makes the game needs to have the pro account. I have a freshly made game right here. Now, by the time that you are hopefully seeing this, the character sheet and app will be updated in the game section. But for right now, since it's not accepted yet, I'm actually using a custom character sheet, which you see here. But hopefully by the time you're seeing this, you're just going to type in Fate of the Norns and use that. But yeah, so here we have custom character sheet, default game settings. This is a hex game, and yeah, that should all be fine. Okay, second thing you're going to need to do is go into API scripts here, open that up, and I've already done that. There are two API scripts that you need to import. The first one is called FotN Companion, and you should be able to find that in here. Again, it hasn't, the updated version hasn't been accepted yet, so this is one that I typed in. The other thing that you need is a script called map change. This is not strictly speaking necessary, but it is highly recommended. Okay, so let's go into the game. And the first thing you should see is that under your content section, there's a handout called README that is all of the explanation for how everything works and how to get started that I'm just about to go over. So this is a fresh install. I'll give you some tips if you're actually upgrading from a pre-existing game in just a second. But here, assuming that you're doing it with a fresh install, the first thing that you're going to want to do, if it's a new campaign, is you're going to type this command into the chat, like that's !start space -- RGS pound, and you're going to want to replace that with the number. So the new edition of Fate of the Norns that is released in Children of Iriu uses RGS3, and the new character sheet supports RGS3. You can make either an RGS2 or RGS3 game, and this isn't set in stone. All this is going to do is determine what type of a playmat it's going to import. So let's do RGS3 here. And that should cause your, whatever page your player's marker is on, which was probably the first page, the start page, you see that it has been renamed to Playmats. And a playmat has been placed on it. It's been placed into the maps and background layer, which is where I recommend that you keep it. And you can copy this and place as many as you have players. You might need to change the dimensions of the playmat. Now, I've set, you note that it's gotten rid of the grid lines as well. I recommend that you go in here and turn off grid. Otherwise, it might try to snap your runes to the grid. And that will get annoying. It's usable, but it's annoying. And cool. So now we're basically started. Now you're good to go starting to make some characters. So let's make a character. Call this one Bob. And we'll put him in my journal and say that I can edit him. And then let's make another character. We're going to call him Sam. He's going to be in all players' journals. Okay. Let's go into Bob's character sheet here. So this is the time code for players joining. It was not a very complicated setup for the Norn. But in this, I've created 2 characters. I assume that your Norn or your GM will do that for you and assign them to you. If you go into the character sheet section, all right, you'll note that the default character sheet is an RGS2 character sheet. Now, I've started this game as an RGS3 game, but a few things for you to note. First off, you have some selectors up here. One is the game type, RGS2 or RGS3, and then you have several tabs. RGS2 and current are used for the 2nd edition Fate of the Norns. RGS3 is used for the 3rd edition Fate of the Norns and Children of Ariu, and Life Path can be used for both. If you take a look under Attributes and Abilities, you'll see that the character comes with a whole bunch of stuff in Abilities. The first thing that you should probably do is click Show in Macro Bar for everything except build. You can do it for build, but that's not a command that you're going to be using very often. Everything else is. So, another thing to keep in mind is that the Inflict ability actually depends, the way that the ability is built depends on whether you're using RGS2 or RGS3 Playmats. So I'm using RGS3 Playmats, so I'm going to go ahead and click that over to RGS3. If you go over here, you'll note that there's no longer an Inflict ability. Actually, it is there. You just have to close the character sheet and reopen it before it realizes that. And now you'll see the inflictability is down here. And I'm going to add that back into my macro bar. That's what we're going to use to put conditions on our playmat. So, if you've used the RGS2 version, the old version of the character sheet, you'll see that this all looks very familiar. And it should look very familiar. The only difference is that I've added a section for social abilities. There will be a way to optionally add the social combat onto RGS2 characters. So if you want to use socials, feel free to go ahead and use this section. If not, feel free to go ahead and pretend that that section does not exist. So, let's say that you're playing an RGS2 game. First off, I'm just going to type some junk in. It doesn't really matter. We'll say that the level is 9, and that you are Essence 2, Destiny 4, 5. And so we'll go ahead, or sorry, that's the other way around. That should be Destiny 2, Essence 5. The only one here that really has to be filled in is Destiny. That is going to be important. When you are adding skills, passives, actives in, see a little add button there. Just type in your rank. For pretty much everything here in the repeating sections, you'll note that there's a box at the end. Clicking that box will open it up. For skills here, it's just a little description box that you can then hide. So for passives, you can select the ability type. Say that this is a rune. We're going to show this. There's a description. And then you'll see there's a bunch of boxes for different stats. So PDF is your physical damage factor, pierce, focus, reach, range, heal, recover, all the standard ones. So I'm going to put some numbers in here. Whatever that ability does, you can put numbers in here and they will then be added to the current part of your character sheet. So this box over here is what's going to show that part underneath. This box here on the left is what's going to add those numbers to your total. So whenever this passive applies, go ahead and click that box and those numbers will be added in. And I'll go ahead and show you where they're added into in just a second. Let's say that this gives you a move of 5. I keep that unchecked. Then we have the active section. Another difference that you'll note from the previous character sheet, the 1.0 character sheet, if you've used that, is that instead of using rune names, it uses the rune symbols. So I got those in there. So I'm going to pick the Othala rune for that. We'll say that this is a spell. We've got some metas that you can use. And then in here we have, again, space for a description. And say it's 2 PDF and 2 Pierce. And whatever it does. Say it's an ability that gives you an attack with +2 PDF and +2 Pierce. So that's what I've done in here. And I'm going to add a few more just with different runes. Oops. Now, what if you put in a rune that you don't want to be there? So, like, let's say I put in this rune and I go, oh, wait, I don't want that rune in there. One of the things that the sheet does is it's going to keep track of all of the runes that you have in your bag. And it's always going to use your actives to do this. If you are using the RGS2 character sheet, then if you want to remove a rune from your bag, you have to go back to the blank. That'll take the rune out of your bag, and then you can select the rune that you want. If you were to just go from here straight to another rune, then it wouldn't actually take the old rune out of your bag. It would just add the new one, and you would end up with a bag that got screwy. Now, the way things are set up, you can only ever have one instance of any rune type in your bag. The Void never gets put into your bag. And for Norn run characters, you see that there are physical, mental, and spiritual runes as well. These are the only runes that can appear more than once in a bag. For everything else, it won't add that rune in if that rune's already in your bag. It is possible for your bag to get screwed up, and that happens sometimes, often by like not going back to basically to touch home base before you select your new rune. If that ever happens, and when you build your character, which I'll show you how to do in a second, the runes get all screwy and they're not lining up properly, go to the Attributes and Abilities tab, and there should be it's not there because it doesn't re-register until you do this. There should be an attribute called Rune Bag, and you can just delete everything in that box. Then set each of your runes. For each of your runes, go back, set it to 0, and then reset the rune, and that'll help you to rebuild your rune bag. Let's see here, this is a Void. I'm not going to bother assigning stat changes to most of these. Socials work exactly the same way that the actives do. Here you have a nice little place where you can put notes. These are all resizable. And equipment. When you add equipment, you have space for the name, a description, and again, a box to show. So let's say that this is, let's say it's a sword. Let's say this sword has reach of 2. It does 2 damage, 1 pierce, and has 1 parry. And yeah, so note that there's a size here. Now I know that equipment does have size. Anything you put in here is going to be reflected onto your character sheet. So unless the equipment changes your character's size, leave this blank. Same with move. Unless it increases or decreases your character's move, leave that blank. And then the sword is equipped. So I'm going to go ahead and check that box. And sometimes you might have bonuses that come from things that that don't fall into any of these categories. And I recommend handling those with just an equipment line for miscellaneous. And all of your miscellaneous bonuses you can just put in here. Like, let's say you've got a 4 bonus from the Fury attribute. And let's say that you have a 2 bonus to your protection factor, that's armor, from a spell that your friend cast on you. So we'll put those in there. Now, if you want to know what your character's current stats are, you go to the current. And here we have physical damage factor, pierce, focus, heal, blah, blah, blah. You can ignore this stuff on the right, or you can use it to keep track of your conditions if you're not using Playmats. It used to be that these numbers would be reflected on the playmat. That is not true anymore. So here you can see my physical damage factor is 7, my pierce is 3. If I go back to my character sheet and then I add my this ability in, which is PDF2 Pierce 2, you see that now my physical damage factor is 9 and my pierce is 5. So everything with the left box checked in front of it, everything in the stats for that line will get added to the current section of your playmat. Now, or of your character sheet. Now that's for RGS2. For RGS3, the character sheets are a little bit different. Everything is combined onto one page. So you'll see if I'm playing RGS3 here, then my social, physical, mental, and spiritual attack, protection, and defend are located in this grid up here in the upper right. So PDF, physical damage factor, is physical attack. Physical protection factor would be here. Defend here. Now your character has only one set of stats. You'll notice that this is already propagated. And you'll note that you have the abilities here that I loaded in from RGS2. I recommend not switching back and forth. Just decide which one you are going to use. So let's say Bob is an RGS2 character. This is why I made 2 of them. Let's go into Sam. Sam's going to be an RGS3 character. So I'm going to go here into RGS3. He's level, I don't know, 9. Say he's Essence 5, Destiny 2. And I'm going to build this in RGS3. If you try to build it in both RGS2 and RGS3, you're probably going to end up screwing stuff up. So I'm just going to show you how to use the RGS3 stuff here. So for active powers, everything is very much similar. So that's the name of the active power. Now there is a little bit of a difference. One thing is that in RGS3, you can have up to 2 runes bound to a single ability. So here, instead of just a normal drop-down menu, there's, when you mouse over this, it'll automatically select. So let's say that's my Void ability. I have a second one here. And maybe I have this bound to both of those runes. So I'm going to select both of them, and note that the runes in this are colored. And here, let's say I have now need, and in this one, I have those 2. So now that's 5 runes bound. You can bind more than 2 runes, like technically, but you shouldn't in the game. So the other thing to notice is the type. So the number of types that were possible was getting a little bit unwieldy. So let's say that this here is a spell song. I would select spell and song, and both of those would then show up. Maybe The second ability is a stance and a spell, so you just select whatever the keywords are that apply to that particular ability. And then, as always, you go into show. You'll have, this will open things up, and you'll be able to choose from all the different meta tags, put in your description, and all those stats that you can change. And again, if you want those to be added into your grid, you just check them on the left. For social powers, you can do the same. Now, normally, you would use the same runes, right? Because you should have the same runes for no matter what your character is. However, I want to point out that what is actually tracked is the runes that you have listed under your active. So Norns, if you want to just create a character sheet, all you really have to fill in is the active powers in order for it to be registered by the build function. Oh, here I'll go in there, and you'll notice that there are different types for the socials. Passive powers, again, you have a name, showing here, description, everything is pretty much the same. For skills, you can now bind runes to skills in RGS3. So, this is that, and I don't know. There's a space for your rank. You can open it up. You have meta tags on skills now. A place for description. Skills do not usually affect your attributes, so there's no way to add anything in for skills, and there are no attributes listed under them. Equipment, very much the same as it was in RGS2. I've just added in the social stats. So for stuff that are not attack, protect, or defend values, you'll see them usually reflected over here. So here you can see the amount of heal that I have, move, and this is, yeah, so that's your move. Your base move is always your size, focus, and size. You'll note that size has 2 ratings. This is your base size here. This is your effective size now if you have an item or an ability that changes your size. The last tab here is the life path, which just has space for you to fill in all sorts of things from your life path selection, social contacts, brushes with power, and there's a place for you to keep track of any strings that you have. Strings are a new mechanic that represent special information that gives you a bonus to particular skills or usually social abilities. All right, so now that we have everything in our character, we need to build them. Let's go ahead and build Sam. Under Attributes and Abilities, you'll see, I'm going to go ahead and click these. I'm going to go ahead and hit the build button. And now if you look over here, you might not be able to see this in player mode, but you'll see Sam is here, and Sam has 2 cards, Rido and Wunjo. But you should actually have more than that. So again, if something weird happens with your runes, they're not all registering, just go in here, zero out the variable called rune bag, and then just go through and unselect and reselect each of them. Now it looks like they're all in there. So let's go ahead and build Sam. Yep, and now Sam has the right number of runes, which is 4. I suppose you're playing. So we have all these play sheets here. They won't work unless they are named. So here we have, I'm going to name this one Bob Playmat. Just put a little text on it. Bob. And then the second one we'll do Sam. This has to be called Sam Playmat. All right, so it has to be the name of the character, and it is case sensitive, space sensitive. It has to be the full exact name, and then space, and then playmat. And the playmat needs to be lowercase. That is how the app is going to find it. So let's say Sam wants to draw some runes. Actually, I don't even need to go in there. I can just go Sam Weird. And you see the runes are drawn to the in-hand section. I can then play these runes. And I hit cleanup. And they go away. What about if you want to maintain something? So let's say Sam plays this, and this rune is maintained. I want to keep it out there. If you have a rune selected when you hit cleanup, it will stay out. And Sam is going to weird again. Let's say this turn, Sam takes some damage. So in order to get runes into the damage track, and note that the number of runes that was weirded to the in-hand, that was equal to his destiny. So let's say Sam takes some damage. I'm going to hit Sam Stun, and that's going to go directly into stun. So that goes to wounds 3. All right, now it's in the cleanup phase. I still want to keep this in play, so I'm going to select that. I'm going to hit cleanup. And note that anything in wounds, death, or drain stays. You don't have to select it. It will automatically not be cleaned up. Stun will automatically be cleaned up in both RGS2 and RGS3 character sheets. So if I go ahead and weird, and let's say I take 2 points of damage, right? So I go and hit stun. Oh, nothing appeared in stun. Why was that? Well, that's because my bag is empty. Okay, so I take 2 points of damage. Goes to there. Goes to stun. End of the round. Now note that it cleaned my rune up here because I forgot to select it. Remember, if you want to keep a rune out there when you clean up, you have to have it selected. And you can have more than one rune selected. So let's say this is a rune chain here, and I have it... Oops. Like that, and I want both of those to stay out there. I can select both of them like that, or I can shift-click to select them both, and then now during cleanup, they don't go away. Okay. Let's see, the other functions. So, let's do initiative. So, Roll20 doesn't really deal with handling initiative the way that most games do. So we sort of have a different system for this. But if you open up the initiative tracker here, right? If you have selected your character, or any character, and then you hit initiative, that character goes into the initiative tracker, and it rolls randomly out of 100. And so technically, it doesn't matter which one you have. So this is Bob up here. Whichever character is selected goes into the initiative. And then you can drag them up or down to put them in the order that you want. If nothing is selected, like hitting the initiative doesn't do anything. You have to have a token that represents your character. Whatever character you want to go into the initiative tracker, you have to have a token that represents that character, and that has to be selected when you hit the initiative button. So, Playmats and rejoin. Sure. I'll show you that now. Norns, or anyone who has a GM function, will note that these don't work for them. You will have to change using the map selector like you always do. But players who are not GMs don't have any choice. They're stuck on the player tab. So I'm going to go here and rejoin as a player. So obviously in Fate of the Norns, you have to do a lot of flipping back and forth between the playmats where all of your runes are and the map where your game is taking place. And so Playmats and rejoin will allow you to negotiate between them. You click Playmats. A little blip there. For some reason, the Playmats wasn't registering the Playmat correctly. So I just refreshed the browser, and in my GM mode, I had to create a map called Playmats and then delete it. Don't know why I needed to do that. Hasn't happened in other games that I've made, so obviously not perfect. But here you see, click Sam Playmats. Takes you quickly to the Playmats. Click rejoin. It goes to wherever the player's, whatever map the player's marker was on. And the last is inflict. So inflict is used for putting condition markers on your playmat. So say I want to give Sam alertness of 2. Is that there? And say I want to give him a anger condition of 1. Is that there? Say he uses an alertness. We can go in and change the alertness to 1. If you want to get rid of it, you can either set it to 0, or you should be able to just select it and press delete. And that'll get rid of it. Whatever. So some tips and tricks for Norns. It is possible to make a playmat on the GM screen, which I don't have access to here because I'm not rejoined as a GM. It is possible to put a playmat on the GM info overlay and then have a character's weird ability weird to the GM info as well. It gets a little bit hinky because if the playmat and the runes are in the same layer, like they're both on the GM info, then sometimes the runes will appear behind the playmat and sometimes they'll appear in front of it, and you'll have to end up clicking the playmat and making it go to the back on a pretty frequent basis. It's annoying, but if you want to have playmats there that are hidden from your characters, it is possible to do that. GMs, you can also create a bad guy. Let's call this a wolf. All right. And you can create it using generic color markers. And you should be able to build that, and it'll have the appropriate colored runes in there. If you need a void rune, you can use whatever marker you want, but you could also just use the color marker for the void rune. That's pretty easy to get a hold of. These playmats are resizable. It's best if you try to keep the proportions the same, but I find that as a Norn, I let the players have like a bunch of big playmats, but for bad guys, for various denizens that aren't bosses, I'll give them a set of like half-size or quarter-size playmats here at the bottom. And those work pretty good as long as you're not weirding like 12 runes for them. But everything still should work with those. And at this point, you should be ready to go play Fate of the Norns. So go play Fate of the Norns.